Hi, welcome back to section 10.1. The last thing we're going to do is graph some rational functions. So the first one I've got for us is f of x equals the square root of x. What I would recommend doing for these is just to make a simple xy table. And we're going to plot some points and see what it looks like. So when you're picking x's, you know that you're about to take the square root. So pick easy ones, okay? Pick ones that are perfect squares that are going to plot really nicely. So the smallest value I can pick is 0. Keep in mind that x's are not going to be negative because you can't take a square root of a negative number. That would be a not real number or an imaginary number. And we're not graphing those on our graph. So the smallest real number that we can get for a perfect square is 0. The next perfect square would be 1. And then the next perfect square would be 4. And then 3 squared would be 9. So there's some nice perfect squares that we can graph. So then let's go ahead and do it. So for y equals the square root of x, or f of x equals the square root of x. So we're going to take the square root of 0, which would be 0. The square root of 1, which would be 1. The square root of 4, which would be 2. And the square root of 9, which would be 3. So now I've got some nice points that I can graph. So I have the point 0, 0. I've got the point 1, 1. I have the point 4, 2. And I have the point 9, 3. 9, 3. And we're just going to connect the dots, and it's going to continue this way. I'm going to put an arrow because it'll continue going to the right and a little bit up. You'll notice that there is not going to be a bottom half here because it's just the positive square root, not plus or minus. Okay? And that's what our graph looks like. Okay, for the next one, I've got f of x equals the cube root of x, and then we're going to add 2. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to make a nice little xy table over to the side here. And when I choose my x's, I'm going to choose ones that are perfect cubes. Now, the nice thing about cube roots is that you can take the cube root of a positive or a negative value. So we'll have some negatives, we'll have some positives, and it'll be a good time. Okay? So let's see here. So we have 0 to the third would be 0. We could have like negative 1 to the third would be negative 1. We could even do negative 2 to the third would be negative 8. So there's some perfect cubes for you. Negative 8, negative 1, and 0. We could do the positives. So 1 to the third is 1. 2 to the third is 8. So there's some nice x values that are perfect cubes that are just going to work out nicely to give me good integer points that are easy to plot. So let's go ahead and do those. So the cube root of negative 8, just going to do one of these for you so you can see. The cube root of negative 8 is negative 2, and then negative 2 plus 2 would be 0. So next up, what if x is negative 1? Well, the cube root of negative 1 is negative 1, and negative 1 plus 2 is positive 1. What about if I put in 0 for x? The cube root of 0 is 0, and 0 plus 2 is 2. What if I put in 1 for x? The cube root of 1 is 1, and then 1 plus 2 is 3. What if I put in 8 for x? The cube root of 8 is 2, and then 2 plus 2 would be 4. You'll notice that I'm doing the cube root first, and I'm adding second because I'm going to follow order of operations, and adding comes last. The cube root, it actually will be on the same level of order of operations as exponents, just to let you know. Okay? So those will definitely come before adding. Let's go ahead and plot our points. So we've got the point negative 8, 0. We have the point negative 1, 1. We've got the point 0, 2. We have the point 1, 3. And the point 8, 4. Okay? So if I connect the dots, kind of looks like this. It's a little sideways thing. Kind of looks like a stretched out S, doesn't it? It will continue forever in the right direction, and it'll also continue forever in that left direction. So it'll keep going with the negative values, and it'll keep going for the towards the positive values. So the domain for this one is actually negative infinity to infinity. Okay? So that's what these graphs look like. Now it's your all's turn. You get to try one and show me how much you've learned.